I'm Jason UFC, and today we have a story about UFC middleweight contender Dricus Du Plessis reacts to talk of title snub after Khamzat Chimaev UFC 294 win. This is what Dricus Du Plessis says. I would have fought a welterweight too. The UFC middleweight title picture has a cloud of uncertainty over it ever since Sean Strickland's shocking crowning last month after defeating Israel Adesanya in Sydney, Australia. This past weekend in Abu Dhabi at UFC 294, undefeated star Khamzat Chimaev appeared to emerge as the front runner. Isn't he ranked? He's ranked number 9. He can't be the front runner. For the opening at Sean Strickland's middleweight gold. Okay, we don't have to waste too much time. Let's get to what Dricus Du Plessis say, right? We don't have to get into all that. Dricus Du Plessis, Khamzat Chimaev, not the boogeyman he said he was. During a recent interview with the MMA Guru, this is the MMA Guru, okay? On YouTube, go and subscribe to the MMA Guru's page and hit the thumbs up button, right? Of course, Dricus Du Plessis provided his reaction to Khamzat Chimaev's successful outing against Kamaru Usman. Unsurprisingly, Dricus Du Plessis was dismissive of Khamzat Chimaev's credentials, downplaying the value of his win over Usman and insisting Khamzat Chimaev would have been, quote, smoked had Paulo Costa remained injury-free. Oh, my goodness. This is what Dricus Du Plessis says. I mean, if I knew that, I would have fought a welterweight too, rather than getting my title shot. This seems a little bit easier. I'd rather do that next. Dricus Du Plessis joked in reference to Khamzat Chimaev's victory over a welterweight, Kamaru Usman. If that was 5 rounds, I think Usman would have finished Khamzat Chimaev. That just shows you the caliber of fighter Kamaru Usman is. Yeah, definitely. Khamzat Chimaev, the self-proclaimed boogeyman, is not so boogie after all. Dricus Du Plessis continued. If I was there, maybe in the first round, yeah, I'm sure Khamzat Chimaev could get me down. Okay, that's fine. I'm not scared to be taken down because then he has to deal with me on the floor. But it wasn't the highest pace fight, and he was so tired. Chimaev was so tired, and Chimaev was fighting a welterweight. If Chimaev's gonna start dealing with top middleweights in the UFC middleweight division with their power and weight, it's not gonna work out like that. Chimaev can be very, very, very glad that Paulo Costa pulled out. I think Paulo Costa would have smoked Khamzat Chimaev. How about that? That's interesting. Is there anything? Okay, let me see. Hold on. Much has been made of Dricus Du Plessis standing in the UFC middleweight division, although an upset victory over former UFC middleweight champion Robert Whittaker this past July appeared to net him a title shot. His inability, I can't say that. I'm going to say instead of his inability, I'm going to say his injury made it impossible to make a quick turnaround to face UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya 2 months later, right? Yeah, due to an injury. Yeah, I mean, I think you should just, I don't think his inability, right? I mean, come on. I just think he was injured. He clearly was injured after defeating Robert Whittaker in the second round, right? We'll get into that a little bit later. Dricus Du Plessis has frequently hit back at the promotion at UFC stands and the comments of Dana White since, and he once again referenced their attitudes towards his situation while assessing the possibility of Khamzat Chimaev fighting for the UFC middleweight championship next. I hope he has an amazing medical team because he needs to be recovered and able to fight in the next 6 to 7 weeks. Facts. Dricus Du Plessis stated sarcastically, with me, Dana White said after the fight, listen, the guy needs to go and heal up. We don't know if he's injured. He did give me that courtesy to up until I actually needed it. Yeah, that's fair. Um, what's going on? Why is this page just reloading? Where were we? Oh, Jesus Christ. Come on. This page is just the worst. The UFC, they're going to be the UFC. Things aren't always fair, and the fight game for sure isn't fair. Dricus Du Plessis acknowledged. I think the way we make this fair is if Khamzat Chimaev cannot fight in 7 weeks, I get the title shot again. I have this weird feeling. I think it's going to happen. That's a perfect way. That's a perfect way to end this interview. I totally agree with Dricus Du Plessis, right? For all of, like, I'm an MMA casual, right? So don't go after me for not remembering every fight and my entire Twitter line being all MMA things. So I'm just a casual, but I totally agree with Dricus Du Plessis. For all my hardcore MMA fans, please, please, please keep that same energy for Khamzat Chimaev. For everyone saying Dricus Du Plessis was scared to fight Israel Adesanya, he's a little girl, he's a P, he's this, he's that, say the same thing about Khamzat Chimaev. The UFC, Sean Strickland fought in September, 5 rounds. He should be ready to fight by what? February, at the latest. The UFC could have a fight booked with Sean Strickland in January or February. If Khamzat Chimaev cannot make that fight, right, then Dricus Du Plessis should 1,000% get this fight versus Sean Strickland. Another thing, when the rankings came out, Khamzat Chimaev was an unranked middleweight, right? Because he's a welterweight. And then he was ranked on the UFC official rankings. I don't know if the UFC does those rankings or it's the media, but the UFC put these rankings up, right? And under the UFC official rankings, Khamzat Chimaev is ranked number 9, right? Like, how can the UFC justify Khamzat Chimaev defeating a welterweight on a majority, not a unanimous decision, not a KO, not a TKO, not a submission, a majority decision, right? One judge scored it a tie, 2 judges gave it to Khamzat Chimaev. Yet, Dricus Du Plessis goes out, fights Robert Whittaker, who was not only the number 1 contender, but Robert Whittaker was a former UFC middleweight champion. Dricus Du Plessis finishes Robert Whittaker in the 2nd round, and you tell me that a welterweight deserves the title shot more than a, like, how is that even possible, right? And after the fight, Chimaev was saying something about hurting his hand. He thought his hand was broken. I haven't heard anything about it since then. I don't know if the rumors are true. I guess I probably could check on Twitter. I have no idea if his hand has been confirmed as broken. But we also had Sean Strickland, who came out. I think it was either before or after the match. I think he was basically saying, I think it was before the match, Sean Strickland was saying that unless Khamzat Chimaev runs through ragdolls Usman, that he doesn't, he probably shouldn't get the title. And I think after the match, Sean Strickland, a lot of people were basically saying that Khamzat Chimaev did not deserve the title shot after that performance. And you have Dricus Du Plessis saying that if that fight was 5 rounds, Usman would have won. And he also says that, if that fight was versus Paulo Costa, a heavy middleweight, a big boy in the middleweight division, that Dricus Du Plessis believes that Paulo Costa would have smoked Khamzat Chimaev. And I think some people probably agree with that opinion. I'm just of the opinion that Dricus Du Plessis did everything he needed to do to deserve the middleweight championship. And for all my hardcore MMA fans, please, if you bash Dricus Du Plessis, which I totally disagreed with, I did not think it made any sense for the UFC to book a number 1 contender fight and then say that number 1 contender has to fight the champion in literally less than 2 months, right? I didn't think that was fair. So With Sean Strickland being a newly crowned champion, he should be ready to go by January or February. Book Sean Strickland. If Khamzat Chimaev cannot make the fight, right, for whatever reason, then just give the fight to Dricus Du Plessis. After that, if you want to say Khamzat Chimaev is still the #1 contender, whatever. But Dricus Du Plessis 1,000% deserves to be the #1 contender in UFC middleweight division. But let me know your opinion of this story. I'm Jason, UFC. Today we had a story about UFC middleweight contender Dricus Du Plessis reacts to talk of title snub after Khamzat Chimaev UFC's 294 win performance. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button, and please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.